Hey guys, what's going on? It's Roth and Joshua here with some big news out of the Sony camp today in Spider-Man universe. First to pull the trigger, and they're going to do a female-led
My goodness.
respond. Female-led superhero movie. You know, Sinister Six, they already made sort of the big announcement a couple weeks ago that Sinister Six would be released ahead of Amazing Spider-Man 3, and now in 2017, they are going to release this as yet unnamed female superhero film spinoff.
From the Spider-Man franchise.
From the Spider-Man franchise. So our big question, first of all, it's going to be penned by Lisa Joy Nolan. So slight connection to the Batman universe with, well, she's married to Jonathan Nolan. But in any event, that aside, the speculation now, the scuttlebutt is, who could it be? So let's talk about that.
We have some candidates.
We'll also have a larger feature that'll delve into this a little more detail, but we're going to shoot through some of them and talk about why we think it may or may not be these folks. Firestar, go.
Firestar, who we know from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. She was actually created for the TV show, the cartoon from back in the day. She's related to Spider-Man, but the funny thing about her is she's been an Avenger, but she's a mutant, so she's also an X-Men.
Right.
And a big part of this conversation that we've been having
is who's got the rights to what.
Yeah, because for those who don't know, Marvel Studios has the rights to all their characters, except they don't own the X-Men because that belongs to Fox. They don't own the Spider-Man characters, that belongs to Sony.
Right.
So it becomes, who does this character who's been on all three properties, where does she fall?
Where does she fall? And that becomes an interesting question because technically Fox owns anything that's called mutant. But because, like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were Avengers also, then Disney can also use them. So we don't know if this means this character is another one that's kind of up for grabs, or if Sony straight up owns this character, how that would work. But would you like to see a Firestar movie?
Yeah, just ignoring all the legal mumbo-jumbo and stuff. I actually like that character. She's really cool. Although without the sort of team dynamic of like Spider-Man and then Iceman and Firestar, which is sort of fire and ice, and they played off each other and use their powers in interesting ways. Without that, I've never seen like a solo comic from her, so I don't really know. She's not really someone I'm really excited for. But it might be cool. I don't know.
I'm just wondering how this fits into the larger universe, which I think is the really bigger question, right? Like, they're going to pick somebody that makes sense in their whole universe. So let's move on from there. Silk.
Silk is a brand new character from the comic books. Literally, like a month ago, they created this character that, the spider that bit Peter Parker turned him into Spider-Man. Turns out that spider bit someone else, this girl, but we never heard of her until now because the villain hid her away. Now she's come back out. She's got this great new costume, really interesting mystery around her, but we don't really know that too much about her.
But that's kind of cool, right? Because the thing is, then you kind of have a blank slate. The film franchise could kind of build this character out in a big way, which would be maybe interesting. It's also interesting to have the connection that she does have similar sort of abilities and things like that. But I wonder, again, if it doesn't make more sense to take a more established character your first time out with something like this.
Because you're spending a lot of money on this. You want to be a safe bet with like a popular character.
It's not a safe bet, period, frankly.
Sure.
But it would be a safer one, I think, with a more established character. So that brings us to another option, which I feel less likely they would do, but it's possible to take a character that has been seen traditionally as a man and turn it into a female.
Maybe do some gender swapping.
Little gender swapping. Maybe you could have, which happens a lot in the comics, right?
Yeah, it just happened to Thor. Yeah. Thor is a woman now.
Yeah, so maybe a female Dr. Octopus, for example. What do you think about that?
That could be interesting. I always enjoy seeing like a character, like what we know, like shaken up and given to us in a new way. There's another comic book called Superior Foes of Spider-Man, where the Beetle is a female, and like that's very interesting, and it's just a different spin on the character. So, and almost every character has had like a female version. There's been like a girl Venom and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe it came up in the office earlier, maybe a female Venom, but I thought, well, why would you really do a female Venom spinoff when you're already doing a Venom spinoff?
Right.
It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and again, like the female Dr. Octopus, that sounds interesting to me. But would you go see a movie called like Dr. Octopus? Like he's sort of only interesting when he's in the room with Spider-Man, you know what I mean? And then you're just like, oh, it's Dr. Octopus, but a girl, or I don't know. What villain? I don't really know. I don't think that works.
I feel like Dr. Octopus is going to be there front and center for Sinister Six. And then this character, whoever it is going to be introduced in Sinister Six. Again, I mean, this is the kind of thing that's very touchy with fans, right? So I think that it would be unlikely and probably unwise to do it that way, to take a character that at least movie-going audiences would expect to be a male character and turn it into a female as your first spin-off movie. I think you would probably take a character that is traditionally a female and then have that character lead their franchise. You know what I mean? So I don't think that's likely, and I don't really even think it's necessarily necessary because there's enough characters to cull from anyway. So let's talk about Spider-Woman.
Spider-Woman, Spider-Girl. So many different people have had one of those names, but we want to talk about two in particular. There's Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, who actually was an Avenger.
Yeah, and showed up first in the Avengers, right? So we're pretty sure that Marvel Studios / Disney has the rights to that character. We don't know, but we think so.
Yeah, she doesn't really have anything to do with Spider-Man. Her origins are wrapped up in like Hydra and stuff, which is a big part of obviously the Captain America movies and stuff. Hail Hydra. And so that leaves us with a different Spider-Woman from the Ultimate Universe, which is like an alternate universe in the Marvel Comics, where she's just a clone of Peter Parker and has all the spider powers.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting idea. I like that idea, Joshua. And this is why. Because if you think about what the Sinister Six movie is, which is where we're imagining that maybe this character would first show up and then spin off, or maybe show up again. We'll get to that in a minute. But this is what's cool about that. You're trying to create a movie based around villains, right? With no hero, that doesn't make any sense. So how do you do that? Well, they accidentally create the hero. And how do they do that?
By trying to clone?
By trying to clone
Spider-Man.
Peter Parker,
Okay.
right? Like, if they're trying to take Peter Parker down, it makes so much sense in terms of how these villains are created and the science.
They have his blood.
They have his blood.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
From Spider-Man 2, yeah. Didn't Harry get his blood eventually?
Yeah, and there's so much in terms of, like, the use of science in these films. So, like, it makes so much sense that they would clone him, trying to fight him, and then accidentally create their own downfall because it ends up being Spider-Woman who fights them. And then she gets her own spin-off movie. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me dramatically.
That would be really cool. Hey, it works. And she's in the comics. She's very important, actually, in the Miles Morales Spider-Man comic book. So it could happen.
It could happen. It could happen. Here's another one that we think may happen. Black Cat.
Black Cat, she's like the Catwoman, but for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And also, she showed up, right? The character was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man 2.
As Harry's assistant.
Harry's assistant, played by Felicity Jones. So everybody's speculating, like, why are you going to introduce this character and then not use her, right? So, like, she didn't have a huge arc, obviously, in that film. But that doesn't mean that she couldn't be introduced again in Sinister Six, like we're saying, and then maybe by the end of the movie, turn it around, right? And become sort of the dualistic character that she is.
She's like an anti-hero. She's like a jewel thief, but she beats Spider-Man. She becomes sort of, she does the right thing some of the time, then always gets away with like a prize at the end. So she's a really cool character. She's really interesting. I know a lot of people were burned on that Catwoman movie that Halle Berry did, but we've learned some lessons right now, and hopefully it could be like a different, like fresher concept. And it's also worth mentioning that, there's sort of this race, I feel now, to get a female-led movie out there. And so they could beat Wonder Woman, they could beat, Black Widow getting a movie, and, it'd be Black Cat.
And the other thing I think that makes sense about that is that they would be getting Black Cat out there before Warner Brothers could potentially reboot again Catwoman, right? Who would be, if they did it after Catwoman, it would be like, why are you trying to bite Catwoman? I think for a lot of movie-going audiences that they would feel this way. But if they get there first, I mean, listen, it's not like we haven't seen Catwoman recently, we have. But still, if they get there first in this iteration of the movies, then I think that they have a leg up in that way with this character. And then also, I mean, listen, Sony's trying to make it work with what they've got. And I think that the route that they're going is anti-heroes. They're doing it with Venom. It makes a lot of sense for this character. If that's the kind of universe that they're building, be kind of a cool option. Anyway, those are kind of our thoughts. We do have a larger feature getting to a little more detail. If you guys want to check that out, let us know your thoughts. Are you interested in who it will be? Are you excited for this prospect? Who do you think it will be? Leave all those thoughts and more in the comments below and keep it locked right here to IGN.